This happened back in 2009 near Dallas, Texas. I was driving with two other friends in the car around 3 a.m. No drugs or alcohol in anyone's system. I was driving on the HWI and we spot two creatures moving towards the road very fast. One leaps the divider beam that was at least 5 feet tall like a person would. The other one stopped before the wall. I could only see because we were going downhill. The one that leaped the wall kept going and it was too late for me to avoid the other one. My front bumper hit first, then it rolled under my car and I felt the back tire go over it. I continued driving because we were freaking out trying to figure out what it was. We got about 3 miles and decided to turn around and figure out what I hit. When we made it back, nothing was there. The next day, I inspected my car. The bumper was shattered, and there was patches of long, stringy hair under my car. We all agreed it looked like a mostly hairless bear with patches of hair, and it moved kind of like a bear or an ape would. After hours of research, I couldn't find anything. When I was about 12, I was on Omegle and got into a chat with dude, and long story short, he showed a blade and said it was some cursed object. And I didn't believe him at all. And he said I could summon a spirit like a collector of souls that would release souls if I said a chant. And so I said it. It was a bunch of gibberish, but after I got off, I felt a very bad presence, like I was just extremely uncomfortable. So I went into the living room, and my dog, which never really freaked out and barked a lot, went insane and barking and howling. I still don't know what it was. I didn't see anything at all. But I slept in my mom's room that night because I was terrified. It happened only that night. This happened to me, male 30, and a friend, male 31, 4 years ago. And while I've shared it with some close friends, it never got treated seriously among them. This experience disturbed me deeply, and more importantly, set me out to get a better understanding of what's out there that we cannot explain. Before I tell my story, you should know I consider myself an agnostic, pragmatist, science-first kind of guy. I never believed in ghosts, voodoo, or anything paranormal for that matter. Reddit, as well as this sub, is a new space for me. So bear with me if I'm breaking any unwritten rules. I've come across this sub and read some personal stories which were received with understanding and curiosity, which motivated me to finally put this into words. My friend and I came back to my home after a night of partying. It must have been past 7 a.m. because it was starting to get light outside. We drank and took some lines of coke earlier that night, so we were still in a chatty mood. We were having a snack and rehydrating ourselves with water to prepare for bedtime. I want to make clear at this point that while we were pretty tired, we were in no way tripping or fatigued on a level where you would consider to have hallucinations. I've done mushrooms and LSD before in my life, and I can tell the difference. What happened next was 100% happening, and we both experienced it in the same way. There was no doubt in either of our minds. My friend was sitting on the left side of the couch, and I was sitting in the chair as depicted below. At some point, while my friend was talking, I clearly noticed that the standing lamp was slightly wobbling. I didn't see when or how it started, and when I noticed and told it to my friend, he looked over his shoulder and noticed it too. It was a light wobble, like something had gently pushed it. It naturally lost its momentum and stopped wobbling. I found it quite strange, as this never happened before. Even if you're close to the lamp and jump around or make sudden moves, it's not that unstable to start moving easily. We were sitting in a relaxed position and weren't really moving or using our hands frantically. My friend waved it off and we moved on pretty quickly. We continued talking, and about 20 minutes later, we both heard a clear and rapid knocking on the wall cupboard's door. It sounded like it was coming from the inside of the wall cabinet. It was 5 rapid knocks, which sounded like someone used their nails to knock. The sound was just a bit louder than our voices, so it immediately grabbed our attention. We were both dumbfounded and looked at each other as we were holding our breath. It took us a moment to say something. We quickly concluded that it really happened, and as we're figuring out if the sound was real, we clearly started to feel more uneasy about the whole thing. It took us about 20 more minutes before we found the courage to open the cupboard. Now you should know that this is a very shallow cupboard. about 30 centimeters without shelves and only some cables coming through it from the ground floor. We are on the first floor, by the way. I used the cabinet to store my internet modem in, and on top of it, I stored this thin mattress. In other words, the cabinet was mostly filled with a soft mattress, no other hard materials that could have made the sound. At the other side of that wall is the building's stairway. There are 2 floors above me, and I was in good relationship with them. The sound of going up or down those stairs is nothing like the knocking sound we heard. Knocking from the other side of the wall would not give a hollow knocking sound like we've heard. I also quickly concluded that it couldn't have been my neighbors knocking, because if we were being loud, for example, they've never done that. They would rather text me. And we also didn't hear anything after the knocking, like footsteps walking away. We basically freaked out and tried to pretend that it didn't happen and go back to what we were talking about earlier. Unfortunately, we couldn't shake this eerie feeling of being watched or haunted. We made some jokes here and there, but let's say the fun was off and we called it a night. The next day, we talked about it with a clear mind, but we were both still perplexed. We still couldn't find any logical explanations. Rats running through the walls, stuff moving in the cabinet, us pushing the lamp accidentally. None of it made sense. The most likely explanation would be someone in the stairway knocking somewhere. We tried to reproduce the sound, but the walls were too thick. I asked my upstairs neighbor if he were awake that morning around that time, and he said he didn't get out of bed before 10. If you came this far with reading, I first want to say I appreciate your time and interest in my story. Perhaps it's not the most wild thing you've read on this sub, but it was enough for me to start looking into the paranormal. It's a wide spectrum, and I have no idea where to place this encounter. To me, it feels like a ghost encounter, but you could call it a spirit or some kind of energy. I can't tell you because this was just the second time something unexplainable happened to me. Perhaps I'll share the first one later. And I don't lean into any of this stuff anyway. Soon after this experience, I moved out of that apartment for unrelated reasons, so I never got to further investigate it. So my lack of knowledge and belief in any of those things make me a bad judge. My question to you, dear reader, is, what do you think of this? Am I crazy? Was I just tripping? Did I witness something extraordinary? I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or similar experiences. In around 2006, I was home alone in my parents' house, farmhouse built in the late 1800s, and I was playing StarCraft on the computer in the corner of the kitchen where the family computer was located. The house had tall 12-foot-high ceilings, and the ductwork to the upper level were just register vent holes cut into the floor, taking the heat from the room below. Around midnight, while playing away, I heard what sounded like an adult yell, "Rah!" through the vent above where I was sitting. Clear enough, it sounded like they had their face right to the vent to really make me notice. My 3 dogs instantly started barking hysterically as I listened to footsteps walk from the vent to the hallway, around the staircase, and stop at the top of the stairs. My dogs still barking, looking up the stairs. I heard what sounded like a ball bouncing down them, like someone had dropped it from the top, but I was looking directly at them, seeing nothing of the sort happening. I was so scared, I spent the next couple hours on the porch with a baseball bat until my parents came home, and my dad gave the house a sweep to double check. It was empty. Hands down, the most wild thing I've had happen to me personally. I have a couple more stories about that house, and my parents still own it. This story takes place in 2014, in the northern part of rural South Carolina. I'm absolutely sure where it happened. I drove this route many times during that year. Very dark, very rural, and this particular stretch of road doesn't have very many houses. This incident happened not far from an old church also. No idea if relevant. I used to work at a tattoo shop and lived with the owner. Our route home took us through the area described above. We'd usually get home fairly late. This night wasn't any different. In fairness, I will say I had smoked some pot earlier, but I am a heavy smoker and it doesn't affect me horribly. I don't think the passenger had done any drugs or drank anything at all that day. We're driving home. I'm probably driving about 60 to 70 miles an hour. Didn't like to go too fast because of the deer and wild hogs, which scared me quite often. We're talking about something, no idea what. I'm slightly glancing over to the right during the conversation, as one does while driving. I noticed something that seems to be running at the woods. Not unusual, often saw shit at the sides. However, I realized that it was still there at the second glance, which causes me to look and see what in the world seems to be still moving beside a speeding vehicle. As I turn my head to look, this form, which I can only describe as the very vague shape of a four-legged wolf-looking creature, but without any definition, runs ahead of the car, goes across the road and into the woods. As it crossed the road and my high beams shone on it, it seemed to absorb the light. No visible fur, no reflection in the eyes, nothing discernible beyond a sort of wolf-shaped blur that was the literal darkest black I've ever seen. This all happened in the span of maybe 5 or 6 seconds, I'd guess. It startled me quite a bit, so I immediately say, "What the fuck was that?" "What did you see?" I reply with the above description, to which my friend goes very quiet and only says, "Tell his wife what I told him when we got home." I tell her. Her face drops, and she immediately looks shocked. Then they tell me my friend had seen it before with someone else, who denied seeing it. Same area, same description, and he saw it too that night that I saw the same exact thing. I have looked online, I have read local Carolina Legends books. I have asked so many old people if they had any idea what it was, and I can't find anything very convincing. There was one story on Reddit where someone mentioned a similar entity, described also as being a void black. Besides that, we are still stumped. One guy said maybe it was like a forest spirit or something. It doesn't fit any black dog things I've read. If anyone here has any ideas, please let me know. It wasn't really scary. Nobody died right before or after we knew, and I didn't see it anymore after that night. We've all moved away now, but I still think about it all the time, and I still have half a mind to go try to see it again. I just really want to know what we saw.
Want to share your paranormal experiences? Do you have questions, complaints, ideas for a show topic, or a hate-filled rant? Send all your messages to our email for live reading on our show. Email us at atomicshamanSweatlodge@protonmail.com.
Mosey on down to the Atomic Shaman Trading Post. We have t-shirts, decals, refrigerator magnets and other swag for sale. What better way to show your support for the show? Our merch can only be found on t.pub/link/Atomic Shaman Trading Post. Like, share and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to ring the notification bell. You can follow us on Twitter at Motel and RV Park. Catch the live streams on Rumble. Listen to text-to-speech stories on Atomic Shaman TTS on YouTube.